So a couple months ago, I put out a video on a website that I sold to my former employer for over $41,000. And since then, that video just kind of went crazy and got, I think it's at 650,000 views right now, and just a ton of questions with that. So what I'm going to do is just go through and just kind of address each question individually in videos like this, and maybe just elaborate a little bit more and just kind of expand on that. So if you saw that video, you know that I no longer work at that company. I sold all the licensings to that, and the company now owns the website, and I'm not working there anymore. And the question that I wanted to address in this video is the fact that a lot of people were asking how I was able to still sell that website and maintain the legal rights to it if I built that under the employment of my former boss. So I did build it when I was at that company, but because of how I set things up, I was able to maintain those rights, and that was very strategic. So I'm just going to share those with you. And before we get started, I also wanted to address the fact that this isn't legal counsel, so I'm just sharing my story. Everybody's situation is going to be different. In fact, very few will probably be like mine, but I'm just going to share my experience. And also, my office here is a little bit different. I'm currently traveling, so this is the best that I can do. So there's going to be some outside noise. We'll try to fix those in editing. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. So just to recap what I talked about in the last video, we had this laboratory management system that the company was running on, and it was super outdated. It was originally built, I think, in 2008, and it needed an upgrade. So I pitched my boss on this idea of this new system that I would build that would essentially be the old thing with a bunch of new features, and it would just be much better. So we agreed to it, and I spent about 3 months learning how to code and a couple more months just learning how to, or figuring out how to build it. I put this thing together, and we eventually just downgraded that system and moved on to mine. So because of this, the system that I built was kind of revolutionary to the market, and a lot of our customers haven't seen anything like this. So we really started making waves and gaining some traction, and we're really getting the attention of some really big players that were potential customers for us. So the system was doing a lot better than I expected, and we really didn't predict anything for this, and we really didn't have any kind of agreement for how I would be compensated, so we just kind of just went with it. So for my employment status, this is kind of important to the story. I was working, part of my income was as a contractor, so I originally started working with a company as a contractor, just doing marketing, and I was also a part-time employee. So my situation was already a little bit different, and because of that, I did a lot of work that was just kind of like I would put it together, I would build a company, so I was already used to just doing work, just kind of on the fly, and then there was my daytime job in a sense. So I was kind of a part-time employee and a part-time contractor. So before I ever got started actually building the website, I had 3 different scenarios in my mind that I was kind of okay with playing out and essentially just taking on the risk and just going through with it. The first one was to take on the risk, build out the website. If it succeeds, I can get some clout with the company and become some kind of partner, and eventually just give the website to the company itself, and I would still mutually benefit. Scenario number 2 would be that I sell the website either to the company or just lease it out to them and service it. And the last case scenario, which was what I kind of thought would happen, I already know going into it that there's a chance that I'm not going to succeed, which was that it completely fails, but at least I get a lesson learned. So I knew that the next few steps in the next couple of weeks in this process were going to be really crucial in how this whole thing plays out, because I already knew that if you build something on company time, use company property, you really start getting into this weird position here. So right away, I made sure to only work on this website and study on my own time. So I never used company time. And I already had my own laptop, so I built everything at home, used all my own resources, and when it came to paying for things like the server, for the database and AWS fees, I covered all of that, and I think in about a 2-year span, I paid about $4,000 for all of this, and just made sure everything was on my watch, and I had all the records for this. So I kept all the receipts, I recorded all emails, anytime we talked about this in a meeting, or if it was emails, I kept records, so I'd always have something to reference to at a later point if this ever came into question. One thing that I really did make sure to do was to always gauge the value of the product itself. So I did want to bring this up in conversation, but I didn't want to really expose my hand and just ask my boss if he wanted to buy it, because I really wanted to make sure the product itself had value and that I would actually have leverage. So as time went and the product became more valuable, I would always almost do like a temperature check, and I would ask about future plans, and I would throw the conversation out there, and I would just say, hey, what do we think about the long-term position of this? What do we want to do with it? And I'd always gauge his response based on that, and made sure that it was something that was an option down the road, because the last thing I would want to do is spend 2 years on this and not even have that on the table. Maybe his mind was somewhere else and he was going to sell the company, and I would walk away with absolutely nothing. So I'd always gauge that and make sure that that was still part of the conversation, and I can see how things can play out later. So in October 2019, about, I think it was 7 months ago from the time I'm filming this, we ended up having this big disagreement, and essentially we knew we wanted to part ways, but the one thing that was in question was the website itself and what was going to happen with it. I, at this point, had invested all this time into it and had this plan for it, and I knew that this was my website. I had built it. I invested all this time and money into it, but usually the employer doesn't see it this way. So we kind of had this tug of war, and we started fighting over this, and we kind of got into this legal battle. So the company kind of started doing what a lot of companies do in this situation, where they start playing this intimidation game where they try to throw legal talk at you. They bring their lawyers in, and somebody in my position usually can't fight that off. Even if I was fully in the right in this situation, what they'll usually do is start bringing in, court talks, and they'll try to drain you and all those fees. And someone like me usually just gives up in this situation because even if I win it, I'm usually not going to get the payout, or I'm going to spend that on legal fees, and they kind of get you to cave that way for a small settlement, or I walk away with nothing. So once I started realizing what they were doing, I knew I had myself pretty well positioned. So I was either ready to fight this thing all the way through or go down with the ship, because there was no way that I was going to hand over something that I knew was rightfully mine and had worked so long on for, that I was either ready to nuke the code or just fight it till the end, but I was not going to hand that code over. I would rather throw away the code, make sure no one can have it, and just go that way, because I wasn't going to allow this company just to completely push me over and walk all over me. So luckily for me, I had myself pretty well positioned. We had a lot of clients that needed it, so I knew I had that leverage, and I also knew that I had time on my side. I had a lot of evidence knowing that the product was mine, and I also knew that the company couldn't survive long without the product, because we've already made so many promises to these customers, and we kind of had them hooked on this product, so I knew that I had the leverage there. So once the legal talk started, I basically told the company lawyer that I was ready to fight this thing till the end, but I did give him an ultimatum and told them that they have a deadline to either accept my offer or I turn the website on and turn off the lights. So the company was not going to have the product, and I was just going to hand them over the database. The data itself was not mine, but I was going to turn off the lights, and the software wasn't going to be working. So they were kind of trying to intimidate me, but once they realized that if this thing goes to court, this thing can take months, weeks or months, usually months, and they wouldn't have the site at this point. Maybe they beat me in court, but they couldn't last without the website. So this changed things pretty quick, and essentially we just reached an agreement, and they basically said we'll settle because they can't deal with that kind of downtime, and they can't rebuild it that quick. So the key in my situation was to have a lot of documentation and maintain my leverage through this process, and just be very careful in how I played things out. Because I recorded things, because I had all the records, everything was on my side, I was able to walk away and still sell that website, even though technically I was employed for the company. They never paid me for it, and I was able to prove that. And long story short, that's how I was able to do this. So in another video, I'm going to talk about how I decided that $41,000 price, and I'll just kind of go through that breakdown. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.